The stars above Zytheria shimmered like scattered diamonds, endless and cold. From her palace high on the cliffs of the capital city, Queen Althea gazed out at the sky with a sadness that had lasted for years. The corridors of her grand palace were filled with light and beauty, yet the queen felt a quiet emptiness that no jewel or celebration could ever fill. She had lost her daughters many years ago. Lyra and Selene, twin princesses, had been taken during a raid by a fierce alien faction when they were very young. Since that day, the queen's heart carried a wound that time could not heal. The people of Zytheria still saw her as a strong ruler. She governed with wisdom, justice, and care for every citizen. Her decisions kept the system safe and prosperous. But no amount of power could bring back the laughter of her children in the palace halls. Sometimes, late at night, she would sit in the royal gardens, staring at the stars, imagining her daughters running among the flowers, their voices ringing through the air, far across the galaxy. In a starship far smaller than the Queen's palace, a human named Ethan Moore adjusted the controls of his vessel. His ship, the Aurora Explorer, was designed for research and exploration, but Ethan had never been interested in the ordinary. He was curious, fearless, and more than anything, determined to understand the unknown. Unlike most humans, he had an unusual sense of empathy, a way of seeing life through the eyes of others, and that often guided him into unexpected places. Ethan's mission had begun as a simple survey of abandoned planets and minor colonies. He was charting life support systems, mineral deposits, and potential new settlements. But recently he had come across something strange. Ancient transmissions, faint and distorted, spoke of children taken far from their home system. The signals were faint and scattered, but there was enough information to suggest that the children might still be alive. Humans often followed curiosity, and Ethan's curiosity had never been mild. He decided to investigate. Upon reaching Zytheria, he did not approach the palace immediately. The queen was a cautious ruler, and outsiders, especially humans, were often viewed with suspicion. Instead, he spent days exploring the city and the nearby settlements, learning the language, observing the people, and quietly gathering information. He noticed that while the citizens admired their queen, there was a shadow over the city's happiness, a hidden sorrow that even the brightest streets could not erase. When Ethan finally sought an audience with Queen Althea, he was escorted through corridors of crystal and light, where every surface reflected the colors of the twin suns. The palace guards, tall and silent, regarded him with suspicion. The humans were rare visitors, and most Zytherians assumed them to be either traitors or troublemakers. Ethan stood before the throne, bowing slightly. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice calm but firm, "I believe I may have information about your lost daughters." The queen's eyes, a deep violet that seemed to hold the night sky itself, narrowed. For a moment she said nothing. She had heard many claims over the years, many false promises of discovery, but something in the human's voice was different. There was no greed, no desire for reward, only truth, determination, and hope. "Speak," she said at last, her voice steady but gentle. "I have heard promises before. Why should I believe you?" Ethan placed a small device on the crystal floor. It projected faint holographic images and data streams, fragmented transmissions intercepted from distant colonies and abandoned outposts. The images showed two young girls, not Zytherians, yet clearly intelligent and resilient. They were living in a harsh environment, surviving against challenges that would have broken most beings. "I have traced their movements," Ethan explained. "It appears they were taken by a rogue faction years ago and relocated to a remote planet outside the main trade routes. The data is incomplete, but I believe I can reach them." The queen stepped closer, her eyes scanning the projections. Her heart skipped a beat. The faces of her daughters, the children she had mourned for years, glimpsed back at her through the holograms. She felt a rush of emotions: hope, disbelief, fear, and cautious optimism. "You are human," she said softly. "Why would you care about children who are not yours? Why risk yourself in such danger?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Because no one deserves to be lost, Your Majesty. And because sometimes doing what is right matters more than reward or safety. I will bring them home if you allow me." For a long moment the queen said nothing. Her advisors murmured among themselves, cautious and skeptical. Humans had rarely been known for courage without personal gain, yet something about this one felt different. She sensed not only bravery but cleverness and determination. the kind that could survive situations no Zetherian could endure. "Very well," she said finally. "I will allow it. But know this, if you fail, the consequences will be severe. My daughters are irreplaceable, and I will not forgive recklessness." "I understand," Ethan replied. "I will not fail." With the Queen's cautious approval, preparations began. Ethan studied maps of the galaxy, historical records of the rogue faction, and every scrap of intelligence the palace could provide. Even with advanced Zetherian technology at his disposal, the journey would be perilous. He would face hostile planets, rogue fleets, and unknown dangers in regions of space where no human had traveled before. Yet the possibility of reuniting the lost daughters with their mother gave him purpose stronger than fear. The Queen watched the preparations from her observatory, her heart heavy with hope. She had learned to govern with logic and reason, but this mission required faith. Faith in a human she had barely met. Faith that the galaxy could allow miracles to happen. She whispered her daughters' names into the wind, imagining them hearing her call across the void of space. Ethan's journey began with a carefully planned route through the outer systems. He used stealth technology to avoid hostile detection, and relied on his own instincts to navigate asteroid fields and treacherous star clusters. Along the way, he encountered small settlements that had no official records, places where his human ingenuity and diplomacy proved invaluable. In these encounters, he gained allies who shared stories of children taken long ago, pieces of a puzzle that would eventually lead him to Lyra and Selene. During his travels, Ethan often thought about the Queen's daughters. He imagined their laughter, their curiosity, and the challenges they must have faced growing up in a world that was harsh and unfamiliar. Unlike most beings he had encountered, they were not just lost, they were survivors. That knowledge fueled his determination. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on him, yet he welcomed it. Humans thrived under challenge, and this was a challenge unlike any other. Meanwhile, back on Zetheria, the Queen could not sleep. Every day she watched the skies for signs, sending messages to guide the human as best she could. She remembered the youngest days of Lyra and Selene, their first steps, their laughter, their tiny hands holding hers. She clung to these memories, allowing them to strengthen her hope. As the stars sped past Ethan's ship, he entered a region of space known for dangerous storms and rogue asteroid belts. This was the first real test of his journey. Using quick thinking and human creativity, he maneuvered through, saving his ship and himself from destruction. Every small victory brought him closer to the daughters and strengthened his belief that humans, though few in the galaxy, possessed a courage and adaptability that could match any advanced civilization. By the time he approached the planet where Lyra and Selene were rumored to be, Ethan had pieced together the last traces of intelligence. The planet was harsh, with icy winds and towering rock formations. Settlements were sparse, and the rogue faction's influence was strong. It would not be easy to reach the children, and he knew diplomacy and strategy would be as important as bravery. Yet, as he landed on the frozen terrain, Ethan felt a quiet excitement. This was more than a mission, it was a chance to restore what had been lost, to bring hope to a queen and her daughters. And in that moment, under alien stars and the cold wind of a distant world, he understood something simple and human. Courage is not just about strength. It is about love, compassion, and the willingness to do what is right, even when the odds are impossible. The journey had begun, and already, the galaxy seemed a little smaller, a little brighter, because of one human who dared to reach across the stars for lost children and a queen who had not given up hope. The frozen planet spread before Ethan like a challenge painted in white and gray. Winds whipped across jagged cliffs, carrying snow and ice that cut through even the strongest layers of his human suit. The settlements he sought were few and scattered, hidden from ordinary travelers. The rogue faction that had taken Lyra and Selene had not left their presence completely, but their marks were subtle. Ethan had to think like them to find them, anticipate their patterns, their habits, and their mistakes. He stepped out of the Aurora Explorer, letting the suit's sensors sweep the surrounding area. Footprints in the snow were scarce, but he noticed irregular patterns near a ridge that matched the faint traces in the transmissions he had intercepted. Human intuition, combined with careful analysis, told him these were likely the tracks of children, or of someone escorting them. Ethan followed the footprints with caution. Each step was deliberate, mindful of both the environment and the possibility of discovery by hostile forces. The rogue faction had a reputation for ruthless efficiency. They would not hesitate to use force against anyone approaching their territory, yet Ethan's human mind thrived under such challenges. Where others might panic or turn back, he adapted, using tools and improvisation to stay ahead. He paused near a hollowed rock formation. Sensors detected faint energy readings, small life signs that matched children. His heart raced. He was close, perhaps for the first time in years, to finding the daughters of Queen Althea. Yet he knew better than to rush. Children, especially those raised away from their home, could be wary of strangers. Trust had to be earned. As he moved carefully, he noticed signs of the rogue faction, remnants of supply crates, subtle marks in the rock, and strange markings etched into frozen surfaces. The girls were alive, but they were not alone. It seemed the faction had left a small garrison nearby, perhaps as protection or to monitor them. Direct confrontation would be dangerous, so Ethan relied on his human skill for strategy and observation. He set up a temporary shelter hidden within the cliffs, watching the movements of the garrison from a distance. Through binocular sensors, he observed small human-like figures moving within the settlement. They were not Zetherian, but their features were not entirely alien either. Ethan felt a surge of hope. His instincts had been correct. They were Lyra and Celine. He had found them. However, Ethan also realized the girls had adapted to their environment. Their clothing was simple, designed for survival in the cold, and their movements were precise, almost trained. They had learned to protect themselves and likely to distrust outsiders. Any sudden approach could alarm them or worse. Ethan had to find a way to communicate without frightening them. Over the next few days, Ethan observed the girls, learning their routines. He noted when they ventured outside, how they interacted with each other, and the times when the rogue faction was less attentive. He realized that brute force would not achieve his goal. Patience and subtlety were required. Humans excelled at this, he reminded himself, because they could think creatively, improvise, and adjust quickly to new information. One evening, as the twin suns of the distant system dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the ice, Ethan made his first attempt to reach them. He left small supplies and signals near the edge of their path, a trail of food, a glowing marker, and gentle audio cues designed not to scare but to intrigue. It was a small test, a way to gauge their reactions. Lyra, the older twin by minutes, was the first to notice. She approached cautiously, her violet eyes wide, scanning the area. Celine followed, equally wary. Ethan remained hidden, watching the girls from a distance, careful not to reveal himself too soon. They inspected the supplies, their expressions shifting from caution to curiosity. It was a small victory, the first sign that they could trust a stranger who meant no harm. Over the following nights, Ethan repeated the process, slowly earning their attention. He left notes written in simple symbols he had observed them understand, small gifts that indicated safety, and tools they could use to survive in the harsh environment. Each night he learned more about their personalities. Lyra was thoughtful and cautious, often thinking several steps ahead. Celine was bold and curious, willing to take risks that even Ethan hesitated to try. Together they were clever, resilient, and remarkably human-like in their determination to survive. Meanwhile, the rogue faction remained nearby, unaware of Ethan's subtle interventions. He took care to study their patrol patterns, using the humans' ingenuity to avoid direct detection. He built small devices to distract guards, rerouted energy signals to mask his presence, and even created illusions of snow movements to mislead watchers. Each success built his confidence, but he knew the most dangerous moments were yet to come. Finally, after days of careful observation and small interactions, Ethan decided it was time to reveal himself. He approached under the cover of night, leaving no tracks to hint at his movement. The twins were outside inspecting a small fire they had made. Ethan stepped forward slowly, hands raised in peace. "I am not here to hurt you," he said softly in the same language they had begun to understand from his notes. "My name is Ethan. I want to help you go home." Lyra froze, her eyes narrowing. Celine stepped slightly behind her sister, cautious but intrigued. "Go home?" Lyra asked, her voice small but steady. "Do you know our mother?" Ethan nodded. "I do. She has waited for you every day of your lives. I can take you back to her safely if you trust me." The girls looked at each other, uncertainty and hope reflected in their eyes. They had grown up thinking their mother had abandoned them, yet something in Ethan's tone and presence felt different. It was genuine, calm, and unafraid. Something in their instincts told them he could be trusted. "Why should we believe you?" Celine asked, her voice cautious. "You are not like anyone we have met." "Because I am human," Ethan said simply. "And humans care about others even when it is hard or dangerous. I am willing to face anything to bring you home." For a moment, the twins considered his words. Then slowly, Lyra stepped forward. "We will listen," she said. Celine nodded behind her. It was a small step, but it was the first real progress Ethan had made. The next challenge was leaving the settlement safely. The rogue faction had patrols, and any attempt to leave openly would draw attention. Ethan devised a plan that relied on stealth, knowledge of terrain, and clever distractions. He created small snow disturbances to mislead guards, used reflective surfaces to confuse sensors, and guided the girls through hidden paths he had discovered during his observations. The journey was tense, but each human tactic worked. The twins learned quickly, impressed by Ethan's thinking. They began to trust his judgment, following his instructions without question. Slowly, step by step, they moved away from the settlement, leaving the rogue faction unaware of their departure until they were far out of reach. As they reached the edge of the icy cliffs, Ethan allowed himself a quiet moment to breathe. They were alive, they were together, and the first phase of their journey home had succeeded. Yet he knew the galaxy was vast and the path back to Zetheria would not be easy. Pirates, hostile systems, and natural dangers awaited them. But Ethan was human, and humans thrived on challenge. He felt a quiet pride in guiding the girls, not as a conqueror or soldier, but as a protector and guide. That night, as they camped in a sheltered cave, Lyra and Celine finally asked about their mother. Ethan told them what he could, careful not to overwhelm them with emotion but to share enough to plant hope. He described Queen Althea's love, her longing, and her determination to find them. He spoke of a palace filled with gardens and light, of people who cared for them, and of a mother who had never stopped hoping. The twins listened, their eyes wide. For the first time in years, they imagined a life beyond the frozen planet, a life where they belonged, a life where they were loved. Ethan saw the flicker of hope in their faces and felt a surge of human determination. He would not fail them. He could not fail them. As the cold winds howled outside, Ethan kept watch, reflecting on the journey ahead. The rogue faction would eventually notice their absence, and danger was far from over. But in this moment, he allowed himself a quiet thought. Humans, despite being small and few in the galaxy, could accomplish extraordinary things. Courage, compassion, and creativity were not limited by species. They were qualities that defined heroes. Tomorrow, the real journey would begin, guiding Lyra and Celine across dangerous space to the home they had not seen for years. But tonight, under the distant stars and in the safety of a hidden cave, they could rest. And for the first time in many years, hope had returned to the lives of the lost daughters of Zetheria. The frozen planet had begun to fade behind them, as Ethan guided Lyra and Celine toward the coordinates that would take them out of the rogue faction's territory. Yet the escape was far from over. The rogue faction was not known for mercy, and they would soon realize the twins were missing. Ethan knew that moving quickly and carefully was essential, but he also knew he could not rush the girls too much. They had to remain calm, trusting his judgment every step of the way. The first hours of travel were quiet. Ethan led them through narrow canyons and over icy ridges, always alert for signs of danger. Lyra walked with cautious determination, her eyes constantly scanning the environment. Celine, though younger and more daring, matched her sister's pace, though she occasionally glanced at Ethan with curiosity. The human's presence was strange and new to them, yet there was an undeniable sense of safety in following him. As night fell, a faint glow appeared in the sky, a patrol from the rogue faction scanning the area for intruders. Ethan immediately assessed the situation. They could not outrun the patrol openly. Instead, he led the girls into a small crevice hidden by snow and ice. The patrol passed mere meters away, unaware of their presence. Ethan's careful planning, combined with human ingenuity, had once again kept them safe. When the patrol moved on, Ethan allowed the girls to breathe again. "We must keep moving," he said softly. "The patrols will increase as the faction realizes you are gone." "We cannot stop until we reach safe space," Lyra nodded. I understand, she said. Her voice carried a maturity beyond her years. She had learned to survive in the harshest conditions, and now she trusted this human to guide them. Celine remained silent but attentive, her gaze fixed on Ethan as he scanned the horizon. Over the next few days, the journey became increasingly difficult. Snowstorms rose suddenly, and temperatures dropped to levels that tested even the specialized suits Ethan had brought. He devised clever methods to protect the girls, using portable shields against the wind, melting ice for water, and building temporary shelters out of natural formations. Every small act of problem-solving reminded him of humanity's ability to adapt, to survive where others might fail. Yet danger was never far behind. During one night as they camped in a narrow valley, the rogue faction discovered the twins' absence. Scouts moved quickly, and Ethan detected them through heat sensors. He realized that the faction would attempt an ambush before the girls could reach the transport coordinates. Acting swiftly, Ethan devised a diversion. He set small devices along the cliffs that emitted heat signatures and lights, creating the illusion that they had moved in one direction, while he led the girls in another. The plan worked, though not without tension. The scouts followed the false trail, and Ethan whispered words of encouragement to Lyra and Celine as they moved silently through hidden paths. "Trust me," he said. "Every step brings us closer to home." The twins obeyed, their faith in him growing with every calculated decision he made. During one particularly harsh storm, the girls struggled to keep pace. Celine's face was streaked with snow and ice, her breath visible in the freezing air. Lyra grabbed her sister's hand and Ethan pulled them both under a rocky overhang. They huddled together, and for the first time, Ethan spoke of the Queen, of the home they had not seen in so many years. "Your mother has waited for you every day," Ethan said. "She never gave up hope, even when it seemed impossible. She loves you more than anything in the galaxy." Lyra's eyes glistened. "We thought she had forgotten us," she whispered. "We have been alone for so long." "You were never alone," Ethan said. "You survived, you grew strong, and now together we will bring you home." The girls stayed close, their trust in him deepening. Even in the harsh conditions, a sense of hope began to replace the fear that had defined their lives for so many years. Humans, Ethan realized, had a unique ability to inspire others simply through actions, through courage, compassion, and consistency. As they approached the edge of the frozen region, Ethan detected movement in the distance. A squad of rogue faction soldiers had discovered their route and was advancing quickly. There was no time to avoid them entirely. Ethan made a quick decision. Using the terrain to their advantage, he led the girls into a narrow canyon where the soldiers could not easily follow. He set up simple traps, fallen rocks balanced on slopes and icy patches designed to slow pursuit. The squad moved cautiously, but Ethan's strategy worked. The soldiers slipped and struggled with the terrain, buying the human and the twins precious time. Ethan's heart raced, but he kept his voice calm and his movements precise. "Stay close," he whispered to the girls. "Do exactly as I say." After tense hours of evasion, they reached a small landing zone where Ethan had hidden the Aurora Explorer. The girls gazed at the ship with awe, unfamiliar with technology yet sensing safety. Ethan guided them aboard quickly, securing the airlocks and starting the engines. The ship lifted off the icy planet just as the rogue faction regained their bearings. Their shouts carried faintly to the human and the twins as they rose into the cold vacuum of space. Inside the ship, the twins finally allowed themselves to relax. Lyra and Celine stared at the control panels, at the stars streaking past, at the human who had risked everything to save them. Ethan smiled gently. "We are safe for now, but the journey is not over. We must reach space controlled by the Queen's fleet before we can truly be home." The twins listened, learning quickly about the ship and its systems. Ethan taught them how to stay secure, how to monitor navigation systems, and how to remain calm during turbulence. They were fast learners, resilient and intelligent, capable of understanding complex instructions despite their young age. Ethan marveled at their ability to adapt, a reminder of why humans were often underestimated across the galaxy. During the long hours of travel, Ethan spoke more of Zetheria and the Queen. He painted pictures with words, palaces filled with gardens, streets that glowed under twin suns, people who cared deeply for one another. Lyra and Selene began to imagine their home again, their hearts lifting with every description. They were starting to believe that a reunion with their mother was not just possible but imminent. But even as hope grew, Ethan knew that danger still awaited. The rogue faction would not give up so easily. They had resources, ships, and determination. Ethan prepared for potential intercepts, calculating every possible route, every maneuver, and every contingency. He used human creativity to think beyond traditional tactics, devising plans that relied on unpredictability, ingenuity, and the courage that humans carried naturally. That night, as the ship sailed through the dark space between stars, the twins slept quietly in their secured bunks. Ethan watched over them, reflecting on the journey so far. He had faced countless challenges, from hostile terrain to patrols, from harsh weather to unpredictable conditions, yet nothing had shaken his resolve. Humans thrived in adversity, finding solutions where others saw only problems. That combination of courage and intelligence was what allowed them to succeed. Ethan allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. They were closer to Zytheria than ever before, and the bond he had formed with the twins was strong. He had earned their trust, and that trust would be key in the next phase of their journey, navigating through hostile space, avoiding detection, and reaching the safety of the Queen's fleet. By the time the first light of distant stars began to illuminate the void, Ethan plotted the next jump. Lyra and Selene stirred, awakened by the gentle hum of the ship. Their faces were pale but calm, and there was a sense of purpose in their eyes. They were no longer the frightened children who had been lost so long ago. They were survivors, guided by a human who believed in them, who fought for them, and who had shown them the first glimmer of hope in years. Ethan glanced at the stars ahead and thought of the Queen waiting for her daughters. He knew the most dangerous part of the journey was yet to come. But for the first time, he felt the quiet certainty that humans could accomplish extraordinary things. Not through sheer strength, but through courage, creativity, and compassion, and that certainty would guide them all home. The void of space stretched endlessly before Ethan and the twins. The Aurora Explorer glided silently through the stars, its small engines a whisper against the darkness. Lyra and Selene had grown more comfortable aboard the ship. They explored cautiously, fascinated by the panels, lights, and strange instruments. Yet even as their curiosity flourished, the weight of their journey remained. They were not yet home, and danger still lurked. Ethan had been tracking the rogue faction's ships ever since leaving the frozen planet. Though their pursuit had slowed, the humans and aliens in the faction were relentless. They would stop at nothing to reclaim what they considered theirs. Ethan knew that a direct confrontation could end disastrously, so he relied on strategy, careful planning, and human ingenuity. The twins watched him work, impressed by his calm focus. "Are they following us?" Lyra asked, her voice low but steady. She had learned quickly, reading sensor data and understanding navigation far beyond what most children could grasp. "They are," Ethan admitted, "but we have options. We need to use both speed and misdirection. You two need to trust me completely for the next part of our journey." Selene, bold as ever, nodded. "We trust you," she said, her tone firm. Ethan smiled faintly. He had earned their trust, but now that trust would be tested. As the rogue faction ships drew closer, Ethan prepared a human-style strategy they would never expect. He programmed the ship's navigation system to make sudden course shifts, creating unpredictable jumps that relied on timing and quick thinking. The twins observed, learning to anticipate the movements. In moments like this, Ethan realized again how humans excelled in adapting to rapidly changing situations, thinking outside any rules or traditions set by alien civilizations. The first jump was tense. The Aurora Explorer darted into a hidden asteroid field, weaving between massive rocks that hung like giants in the void. Sensors beeped warnings, but Ethan's steady hands guided them safely. Lyra's eyes widened as she saw the rocks pass closely outside the viewport. "We might have been caught," she whispered. "Not yet," Ethan said calmly. "We need to stay focused. One mistake now could end everything." Selene gripped the railing tightly, but her excitement was evident. "I've never felt anything like this," she exclaimed. She had grown up in harsh conditions, but nothing had prepared her for navigating a moving maze of asteroids at light speed. The rogue faction followed but struggled to match Ethan's unpredictable maneuvers. Each jump through the asteroid field forced their pursuers to slow, hesitate, and risk collisions. Ethan used this advantage to move closer to a neutral space corridor controlled by a friendly system allied with the Queen. Reaching that corridor meant safety. But first they had to survive the final push. A sudden alarm blared. Sensors indicated that one rogue ship had managed to break formation and was heading directly for the Aurora Explorer. Ethan's mind raced. "We have to outsmart it," he muttered. Using the human gift of improvisation, he deployed a series of decoy drones from the ship's rear hatch. Each drone emitted signals that mimicked the ship's energy signature, confusing the enemy sensors. The rogue ship fired, but the blasts struck the decoys, leaving the Aurora Explorer untouched. Lyra and Celine gasped, their eyes wide with wonder. Ethan grinned faintly. "Humans always find a way when they have to," he said. With the immediate threat behind them, Ethan turned his attention to the twins' well-being. He made sure they were secure in the cabin, giving them a chance to rest. Though they were tired, their eyes shone with determination. They had begun to see the journey not as a struggle, but as a path home. A home they had almost stopped believing existed. As the hours passed, Ethan shared more stories about their mother, Queen Althea. He described the palace gardens, the light-filled halls, and the people who had never stopped waiting for them. Lyra and Celine listened intently, imagining a life beyond their struggles, a life full of warmth and care. Slowly, their fears began to ease, replaced by hope and anticipation. But hope alone was not enough. Ethan knew the rogue faction would not give up so easily. They had intelligence networks, and somewhere, someone would be alerting them to the twins' location. The final leg of their journey required speed, stealth, and precision. Ethan charted a course through a dense nebula, a natural hiding place that blocked sensors and communications. The twins watched as the ship glided through clouds of gas, colors shifting from green to purple to deep blue. "This is beautiful," Celine whispered, pressing her face to the viewport. The colors danced around them, and for a brief moment, the dangers of the universe seemed far away. "Beauty exists even in danger," Ethan said softly. "Remember that. It is one of the things humans see clearly. Courage and hope can be found in the darkest places." As they emerged from the nebula, the friendly corridor appeared. Patrol ships from the Queen's fleet awaited, scanning for any threats. Ethan signaled them cautiously, and a small escort approached, confirming their identity. Relief washed over him, but he remained focused. The twins were safe for now, but the journey home was still not complete. Lyra and Celine saw the ships and began to cry quietly, tears of relief and disbelief. "We are almost home," Ethan said, his voice calm but full of emotion. "Your mother is waiting." The escort guided them into the corridor, past checkpoints and sensors, until the familiar colors of Zytherian space began to appear. Ethan's heart lifted. He had done what few humans could. He had faced danger, adapted to challenges, and kept the twins safe. Yet he knew that the reunion with the Queen would bring the most profound challenge, not of skill but of emotion. Finally, the Aurora Explorer entered orbit around the capital planet. The city below shimmered with light, and the palace stood high, gleaming under the twin suns. Ethan guided the ship to a secure landing platform, careful to maintain calm as the twins clung to his sides. They were silent now, too overwhelmed with emotion to speak. As they stepped out onto the platform, Ethan gestured toward the palace. "There she is," he said softly. "Your mother is waiting." Lyra and Celine turned, their eyes searching. And there, standing at the edge of the garden terrace, was Queen Althea. Her violet eyes scanned the landing platform, and when she saw her daughters, tears filled her eyes. She ran toward them, her long robes flowing behind her, arms outstretched. The twins hesitated for a moment, unsure after so many years. But the bond of family, unbroken by time or distance, pulled them forward. They ran into their mother's embrace, clinging to her as if they would never let go. The Queen's tears fell freely, her sobs of relief and joy echoing across the terrace. Ethan stepped back, giving them space. His heart swelled with quiet pride. He had faced impossible odds, traversed dangerous space, and used every human skill at his disposal to reunite a mother with her lost daughters. And now he watched as hope, love, and courage triumphed. The Queen finally lifted her gaze, turning toward Ethan. "You, a human," she said, her voice trembling, "have brought them back to me?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty." They are safe and they are home. The Queen took a moment, her eyes studying him. Then she spoke words that resonated across the platform. You have done what many believed impossible. You have proven that courage, determination, and compassion are not bound by species. For this I am grateful. Lyra and Celine clung to their mother, glancing occasionally at Ethan. They had faced danger, learned trust, and now understood the value of human ingenuity and courage. Ethan's presence had changed their lives, and they would never forget the human who had guided them home. As night fell on the city, lights twinkling across the palace gardens, Ethan looked up at the stars. His journey was not yet over. Humans were explorers, adventurers, and protectors. But tonight he allowed himself a quiet moment of satisfaction. A mother and her children were reunited, and humanity had once again proven its unique strength, courage, creativity, and compassion that could cross galaxies. The Queen's fleet would ensure their safety, and the twins would soon return to the palace. But the memory of their journey, the human who had risked everything for them, would remain with them forever. Ethan smiled, ready to continue his travels, knowing that humanity's legacy had grown a little brighter that day. The palace gardens glowed softly under the twin suns as Lyra and Celine clung to their mother, their small hands wrapped around her robes. Queen Althea held them close, her tears falling freely, her heart finally mending after so many years of sorrow. The twins' laughter, tentative at first, began to fill the air, echoing across the terraces. It was a sound the Queen had longed for every day since their disappearance, a sound that made her feel alive again. Ethan stood a few steps back, watching quietly. He had completed the impossible. Against all odds, he had traversed dangerous space, faced hostile forces, and used every skill he had as a human to bring these children home. Yet the reward was not wealth nor fame, but something far more profound, the restoration of a family, the rekindling of hope, and the triumph of courage and compassion. The Queen finally turned her gaze toward him. Her violet eyes were still wet with tears, yet they shone with gratitude. You have done what no one else could, she said softly, her voice trembling. You have brought my daughters home. Words cannot express what I feel. Ethan shook his head. I only did what I thought was right, Your Majesty. No one should be lost and forgotten. Not children, not anyone. Humans have a saying. Courage and hope can cross any distance, even galaxies. Lyra, now standing beside her mother, looked at Ethan with wide eyes. You risked everything for us? She asked. Her voice was a mix of wonder and awe. Yes, Ethan said gently, because you are worth it. Because your mother is worth it. Because hope is worth it. Celine stepped forward, her small hand brushing Ethan's arm. Thank you, she said simply. Though her words were few, the sincerity in them carried weight. Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth he had not anticipated. Humans often measured success not in victories or medals, but in the lives they touched, the hearts they changed. The Queen guided the twins toward the palace, the gardens shimmering under the late afternoon light. Citizens had gathered quietly, giving space for the reunion, yet they watched with admiration. Stories of Ethan's courage had spread across the capital. Humans were rare visitors to Zytheria, and few had ever ventured into the galaxy with such bravery and ingenuity. Now, this one human had proven that even a single individual could change the course of fate. Inside the palace, the reunion continued. Lyra and Celine were given warm baths, new clothes, and comfortable rooms filled with light and color. For the first time in years, they slept in a place that was truly their home. Queen Althea remained nearby, her eyes never leaving them. She could hardly believe the moment had arrived when her daughters were safe, sound, and smiling again. Ethan remained in the background, attending to technical matters with the Queen's advisors. The rogue faction had been temporarily disrupted by the twins' escape, but the Queen wished to ensure their safety fully. Ethan helped strengthen defenses, using his knowledge of rogue tactics, navigation, and human ingenuity to advise on strategies the Zytherians might not have considered. His presence became a bridge between human creativity and Zytherian technology, proving the strength of collaboration across species. That evening, the Queen summoned Ethan to her private chambers. She motioned for him to sit, and he obeyed, feeling the weight of the moment. Althea regarded him with deep respect, her expression serious yet gentle. You have done more than bring my daughters home, she said. You have restored hope to this palace, to my people, and to me. Humans, you have qualities that even the most advanced civilizations sometimes forget. Courage, compassion, and ingenuity. You have proven that the heart can overcome even the greatest odds. Ethan nodded humbly. I only did what I could. Your daughters are strong. They survived, and I only helped guide them back. The Queen smiled, her hands folding over her lap. Strength and survival are admirable, yes. But it is trust, guidance, and selflessness that have made this possible. You have shown all of us what it means to be brave. She paused, her gaze steady. Ethan Moore, you are a hero, not because of weapons or armies, but because of your heart. Ethan felt a quiet pride, but more than that, a profound sense of fulfillment. Humans were often underestimated in the galaxy, seen as weak or simple compared to advanced civilizations. Yet here he had demonstrated the power of courage, empathy, and determination, the very traits that defined humanity. The next days were filled with joy and celebration. The Queen hosted a small ceremony in the palace gardens, not for ceremony's sake, but to honor the reunion. Citizens came forward to greet the twins, to see the human who had returned them and to witness a moment of hope restored. Lyra and Celine, initially shy, began to engage with the people, their laughter blending with the hum of life across the terraces. Ethan observed quietly, knowing that his role was complete. The twins were safe, the Queen's heart was full, and the people had witnessed something remarkable. The courage of a human who had crossed galaxies for love and justice. It was proof that sometimes the smallest actions carried the greatest impact. During the celebration, Lyra approached Ethan. Will you stay for a while? She asked, her voice gentle. We want to know more about you, about humans, about how you did all this. Ethan smiled. I will stay as long as you need me, he said. But soon I must continue my own journey. Humans are explorers, and there is still much to see and learn in the galaxy. Celine hugged him tightly. We will never forget you, she said. You are part of our story now, always. The Queen approached, her hand resting on Ethan's shoulder. You will always have a place here in our hearts and in Zytheria. I cannot thank you enough. The galaxy may remember many events, but today will be remembered for the courage of one human who brought home what was lost. As night fell, the palace lights glimmered like stars themselves. Ethan stood quietly watching the twins sleep in safety, feeling a profound sense of satisfaction. He had faced impossible odds, confronted danger, and guided these children across hostile worlds. Yet the greatest victory was not in survival, nor in skill, it was in restoring love and hope. In the days that followed, Ethan worked alongside the Queen's advisors to ensure that the rogue faction could no longer threaten the twins or the palace. His knowledge of tactics, space navigation, and human problem-solving proved invaluable. He showed the Zytherians that sometimes courage and cleverness mattered more than sheer power, and that collaboration between species could achieve what alone seemed impossible. Lyra and Selena grew stronger with each day. They explored the palace gardens, studied with tutors, and slowly learned about the home they had been separated from for so long. Ethan guided them gently, teaching them practical skills, the importance of observation, and the value of trust. Though their mother's love was eternal, Ethan's guidance had shown them how to navigate danger, solve problems, and believe in hope. Finally, when the twins were fully comfortable, Queen Althea called a private audience with Ethan. She held a small crystal pendant in her hand, a family heirloom that had belonged to her daughters. She placed it in Ethan's hands. For your courage, for your guidance, and for restoring what was lost, she said softly. This is a symbol of our gratitude. It is not a gift of wealth, but of trust, honor, and remembrance. Whenever you look upon it, remember that you have changed lives in ways that cannot be measured by stars alone. Ethan accepted the pendant humbly, feeling its weight not as metal or crystal, but as the significance of every risk taken, every moment of trust earned, and every life touched. I will never forget this, he said quietly, and I will carry your story with me wherever I go. The Queen nodded, her eyes filled with emotion. And we will never forget you, Ethan Moore. You are more than a human visitor. You are part of our family now, and part of Zytheria's history. As Ethan prepared to depart the palace, he looked back at the Queen and the twins. He saw not just relief and joy, but strength, resilience, and hope for the future. Humanity had shown its courage once again, and in the heart of Zytheria, one human had proven that determination, compassion, and ingenuity could achieve the impossible. The Aurora Explorer lifted off from the palace landing platform, Gliding past the shimmering city, past the gardens, past the palace that had once been silent and now rang with laughter, Ethan gazed out at the stars ahead, knowing that his journey would continue. But the story of Lyra and Celine, of their mother's love, and of the human who reunited them would remain in the hearts of Cytherea forever. As the ship disappeared into the void, the queen stood in the palace gardens holding her daughters close. She whispered their names, grateful for the human who had returned what was lost and for the courage that bridged worlds. In that quiet moment, hope had been restored, love had been reunited, and the legacy of one human's bravery would shine across the galaxy for generations to come.